Good afternoon and welcome to this next IMS panel, and the title of it is A Twist in My Sobriety, and it's looking at the issues around going or staying sober while working in the nightclub industry, because as many of us are aware, the industry is kind of awash with drugs and alcohol, which in some places anyway, which can be for some people fun for a while, maybe even years, but is it sustainable long term to be getting caned every weekend? There are obvious physical health issues involved and mental health issues too. But how hard is it to abstain from substances in the industry and get sober? We've got some very interesting panel guests here today. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. If we can start with Carl, please.
Carl Smyth. Yeah. Here. Hello.
Ian Golden.
I'm Luciano, the DJ, also a musician.
And I'm Claire Sivier.
So if we can start with Luciano, you've decided to speak on this panel because, is it right that you've been sober for 2 years now? How did that come to be? How did you arrive at that decision?
Well, it was actually 2 years ago. I had an accident of excess. I just exceeded with my work environment, I would say, and I exceeded with drugs, alcohol, and everything that comes around. Also, a lot of medicaments and things. And 2 years ago, I had an accident that put me in front of a simple question: do you want to live or do you want to die? And I took a journey, a complete twist in my career, in my whole life, also, in a huge change that actually changed everything. I mean, everything I had around, from my family, from everything I had around, and it gave me a second chance, I would say. Yeah. So that was the 2 years ago I had this this accident that gave me a second chance, I would say.
What have you found since then that there's pressures on you when you turn up for a DJ gig that people are saying, hey, have one of these shots or la la la?
I mean, we can't, you know, it's part of it. There's a part of I would say behavior that, of course, when people go out, that they associate it with going to dance, with having fun, with having a shot or having drugs or things like this. It's just like, I think it has to do with the behavior. For me, it was more a matter that I chose to say that I cannot live longer this way, because I will suffer the consequences of death, basically, on my own life. And I decided to find a way or take a twist in order to keep doing what I love to do. I mean, my passion was music. My gift was music. My gift was not the fact that I was a rock and roll kind of crazy guy. The gift that I have was the chance that was given me to give music to all the people around. And I had to be responsible with that. I had to be a little bit more humble and less stupid in order to take this chance and take care of this, yeah. And basically, this is where the whole process started.
Did you have like a certain cut-off day where you kind of gave up everything?
I mean, the one of the things is like I've at one point I did it for long years of consumption and drugs and party and thing, and the reality is that without help I wouldn't have make it.
What sort of help did you get then?
I had to go to a rehab center. I mean, it was. I think there's one point that when you reach a certain point, you're sick. It's impossible to do it on your own, even if you have the best intention. I mean, those intentions were present in my person since long years, but there was never light or never way for me to find in order to find a cure for this. And I remember in the very last weeks that I was like really way there down, that it was known, I was alone, it was dark, it was horrible, and I find this little gap of light that I said, like, maybe let's find the last thing that I've never done, which is let's try to go to a rehab, to a professional environment that will have professional people around me that will explain me what the fuck is going wrong with me. Yeah, because that's what my question that I had every day. Why me? What have I done wrong to be like this? I'm a sensible guy. I've never wanted to ended up like being a junkie, I would say. And I always wanted to be creative, to please people, to do something for the others. And I ended up in a shit dark hole that I didn't know how to get out. And I would say that that was the best decision I ever did in my life, to go to a rehab center. I went on my own. I had people around me who helped me with that decision, but the decision came from me, and I went to this center in order to find answers and to have professional people to actually guide me through different process. Yeah, and that was the beginning of a new journey, I would say.
Is it hard now because probably some clubs you go to, there is still a lot of consumption of substances going on? Is it hard for you to be around that now?
I think of course it's always hard. I mean, I accepted that I will always have this personality that is very tempted to do things, but I accepted also parts. First of all, I've learned how to love myself again, which I lost through the years. Yeah, to really appreciate simple things, to really take care of the very basic, not anymore the whole glitter superficial thing. And of course it's not easy because it's always around me, but I've associated this in my case. I'm not saying that it's for everybody, but on my case it was clear that it was or living or dying. And for me, this whole thing represents my death. Yeah. So for me now it's easier, but I would say that in the very first year, it was very difficult because I didn't know when I used to go out the very first, because I didn't quit my job. I continued doing what I was doing. So I went out of the rehab, and when I came out of the rehab, they was like, we don't think you're going to make it because it's your work environment is so nasty for the problem that you have that is going to be very hard for you. But at the same time, it was a challenge for me. It was like, come on, I want to make it. So when I came back, at the very beginning, it was hard to it didn't make sense because for me going out was about drinking and it was about partying. So and that was my way of having fun or even appreciating or doing my art, I would say. And it took me a long time before it hit my head. What was the reason why I was going out? And the answer for me was super simple. I like going out because I like telling jokes. I like laughing with my friends. I like dancing, and I like maybe eating and things like this. It's one of these three is not there. I'm leaving. I'm cutting out, and I'm done. But it took a long time. That process was a long thing. So I'm trying to focus. I focus into dancing. I focus into energy. I focus into smiles. I focus into laughing. I focus into music. And if something is not there, that it's not creating a constructive and objective idea, I'm gone. That's it.
Cool, thanks for that. Perhaps in a slightly similar vein, Carl, when you've been a touring musician for many years, what kind of temptations did you find whilst on tour, and what did you get involved with that you've now given up?
I think pretty much everything apart from smack, really. Temptations, it's all around. Yeah, ask me another one.
Why did you decide to get sober then?
Well, I really related to everything Luciano was saying. The isolation, the crazy thinking, the emptiness, anxiety attacks, and I just knew I had to save myself. Really, it really was. I'd really gotten to the end of my tether with it.
Did you have like a cut-off point where it was like I'm giving up everything on a certain date, or?
March 26th, and then my primary drug was hash. I love hash, and March 26th I gave up. 2016, I gave up alcohol, stopped, and then a few days later stopped hash and all substances.
Do you think there's a because the music industry there's quite a lot of addicts in different respects around. Were you an addict? How did you conquer your addiction?
Well, I always had a lump of dope with me, you know, always everywhere. Rolled up everywhere. I mean, the way I like to say it is, every time you're having a good time, whatever you're using, alcohol, cat, whatever, I don't know, whatever your fancy is, you're kind of paying membership to a club, an exclusive club, which you don't actually want to be a member of. And as it goes on, all of a sudden you're actually a full member, but you don't even realize it. Everyone else around you realizes it, and shit starts happening. You know, you may fall out with business partners or managers or lose a relationship, and you'll keep stitching together this delusion because you're high functioning that everything's all right. So it's really hard to get the message until you get to a place of almost spiritual emptiness, you know.
So since giving everything up, how has your outlook on life changed?
Talking with Ian earlier, you know, meditation's great, really appreciating breathing. And that sounds a bit mundane, but really breathing, you know, living in the moment. I walked the Camino de Santiago. I mean, I'm a really lazy, sedentary bugger, but I walked 800 clicks on the Camino de Santiago, which for me was kind of startling. My relationships, I mean, I think you can tell a person's psychology by the nature of your relationships with others, you know. So, yeah, things are pretty good. I mean, we had a pretty good chat before this, didn't we? Yeah.
Cool, excellent.
To the toilet, it was very helpful.
So, Ian, what's your kind of interest in issues around sobriety and substance misuse?
Yeah, I've been sober from drugs for 20 years, DJing for 23, and alcohol for 6. And twice in my career, that's all I've ever known. All I've ever done is made music. It's the only thing that really made sense to me. And twice in my career, I've realized or thought that I could no longer make music. Once when my ears started to go bad, and then once when I got really, really sober and realized, wow, I don't know if I can keep doing this because my values and my lifestyle choices are so different. And in both of those times, I realized that really I just needed to see other alternatives, other ways of being in the world, continuing to laugh and dance and play, and go home and feel really good, and then wake up the next morning and feel really great too. So I'm still playing music. I'm still happier than ever. We talked about this a lot backstage. Like, man, being sober it's a fucking blast. Like, you dance longer, harder, or sets are better. You're more aware of your creativity. It just requires thinking more creatively about, okay, how do I make this work? Like you were talking about your ginger shots. You know, people want to do shots with you in the booth, so Luciano has a creative solution to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's an idea also. My sister, she's an naturopath, so we were thinking of how can we still have a little bit fun sharing things, because, you know, this idea of sharing also is important. I don't want to exclude, and I was always, when I was in the DJ booth, everybody was coming and they were like excluding me, so I always felt like I'm the sick guy that they always put apart, and I felt they bring me back this memory of being ashamed of who I was. And we came with this simple idea of having these ginger shots that actually is healthy and you can share with everybody. It gives you a little bit of something because it's spicy, so it makes something special to everybody, and people started actually getting used to it and liking it.
What's in your ginger shots? Who makes them?
It's called pure cold pressed ginger. It's pure ginger, basically.
Do you have them on your rider now, kind of thing?
Yes, it's part of my rider. It's like every day I go to the club. Of course, I have a lot of promoters in clubs that they're like, what is that, Luciano? Come on, make an effort, like make something simple. But I put a YouTube video with a link showing them how you make a ginger shot, which is very simple actually. And you can make it. It's way cheaper than to buy a bottle of champagne or whatever. So it's just a little bit efforts that actually would create a good working environment for me. So this is the only thing I ask. I don't ask for anything else. No more booze, no blah, blah, but just this little detail that actually makes everybody happy at the end. And sometimes at the end of the party, I have even the promoter friends that they're like, you know what? It's pretty cool, your thing, you know? It's like, they start to like it. So it's just, how do you recreate a little kind of, not ceremony, but moment that you can have a sharing without being excluded, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to, you always feel in this crazy world, being excluded is sometimes, it's hard also.
When are you going to start marketing your own brand of
Well, we were
ginger?
discussing about it, actually. So she gave me this great idea, actually.
Claire, what's your kind of journey involving the music industry and issues around sobriety and substances?
Well, I started when I was 19 years old, and my kind of big dance moment was my ex-husband had Deconstruction Records, so we were over here a long, long time ago, partying. I was always excluded from most things because I didn't join in with taking drugs and drinking, and I seemed to always be rewarded with more work, which says a lot about the actual business. And it was about 14 years ago that I went into behavioural psychology and I started working with artists. And actually what I try to do now is work in the prevention and preparation for creativity. So just even listening to you guys talking about, I was in it for the music, this kind of positive, I love dancing, it's energetic. That's the kind of modelling that I use when I'm working with very young people. Now, the interrupter that seems to be the biggest issue with these very talented, gifted musicians and artists is they have to enter the music business. Now, it's nice to see so many people here, but there's probably loads of people on the business side getting pissed already in the bar. And I've been here 24 hours, and I'm hearing various different stories of what's going on in different rooms in this hotel. And there's a lot of very dysfunctional addicts that haven't got the balls to actually say, I've had a problem, I had to go and get help. They remain in the business, and when you say I need certain things in my rider that keeps me healthy and well, yeah, it's a pain in the arse to them. And we really, for me, it's about educating the business side, how we can maintain your creativity so you have a healthy career without this huge catastrophe in the middle of it. And you guys speaking about this, if you're a young DJ or a musician, it's like, listen to the joy that's coming from this part of your journey. The catastrophe part, you have to be very aware of when you're using something and when you're abusing something and when you suddenly become dependent and addicted to something. And those paths, we were talking about it earlier, they drift very closely together, and it's a rapid decline. And what a terrible thing to have to go through. So, for me, it's working now, listening to people who unfortunately have had to go through this. And we did also say good things come from these situations too.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that is learning and passing it on so that we re-educate people. We live in a very different time now, and I think we still both smoke, but we're seen as the lepers here. And the perception of smoking is now, disgusting and revolting. And I wouldn't believe that. We were saying Humphrey Bogart, you think it was a really cool thing to do. That perception's gone. Not drinking, that we can change that as well. I was a bit disappointed at the ultra party last night because it took me 20 minutes to get a glass of water and not a glass of wine. And, I think we have to think a little bit more. It's fine not to drink. And actually, I really don't want to hear managers telling me how hungover they are when they want to have a meeting, because it's really fucking boring.
Yeah, I mean
Way back when, though, were you experiencing like peer pressure to, oh, come on, just have a drink?
Well, no, because I'm a very confident person. I've never really given a shit, and I just saying I'm not interested. Watching someone do a line of coke off a toilet seat to me was, how revolting is that? That's awful. Maybe because I'm a bit of a snob, and getting absolutely trolleyed. Well, feeling sick and being boring as well. It's like I can be boring in other ways, but I don't want to have that, oh my God, what did I say? What did I do? People saying to me just now, actually, oh, you can get a lot of business done, in that kind of backstage or on the dance floor. Well, you can't. What kind of high-quality business is being done there? You're all kidding yourselves. That's just bullshit. It's like, it's great to have fun, but, you know, it's like this excess kind of behaviour is just, it's making the world very sick, actually, I think.
Do you guys regret any of your time sort of using different substances, or you're just happy where you are now kind of thing? I wish I hadn't done all those years of blah, or that was just part of your journey.
I think it's really important not to sit in judgment, you know, I firmly believe that everyone has a right to their own choices, and although they may not be the best choices, like everyone makes choices that they feel are the best for them. So I don't look back and say anything was bad, because it was all a learning experience, and it got me to a place where I am today, and I'm really grateful for that place. So I just think our job, and I imagine the reason we're all here, is just to help people understand that there's just other choices. You don't have to go to the club and get, what was the word you used? It was so cool.
Oh, I can't remember. It was probably trolleyed or
Trolleyed, yeah. I'm going to learn that one. There's just other choices, you know. Like for me, I play a lot of events that are sober events. That's primarily what I do now. And there's lots of them around the world that people simply don't know about. Like I'll turn up to a place and there's 300 people sober, just there to dance their ass off. It's like the world's best DJ gig that nobody knows about. And there's just a lot of other choices. And I don't think we should judge our own choices or others, but just continue to maybe make ones that serve us a little bit better.
How about you, Carl? Do you have any regrets about your time using substances?
Not really, no. No, I had a great time, you know, until I didn't, you know. Oh, flashbacks there, you know. No, it was great. It's fabulous. But, I mean, you know, again, you get to a point where it's just enough. It's enough. And, I mean, obviously, it's not going to happen to everyone. And like Ian said, I don't want to judge what people want to do. That's their bag, you know.
Do you find that tricky, Claire, with young people you work with? Because you know, like, these guys here had X years sort of like having fun partying or whatever.
No, I do see a younger generation who, you know, are probably vegetarian, and they're more conscious about the world and environments, and they're looking for more sort of spiritual things to turn to. So I think we've definitely got a younger generation that are very different to us. But I do find, because we have the same people in place of this system, it's an ecosystem, we all have to take responsibility, and we do have to, you know, point out when someone is being unpleasant, and not, but they shouldn't be putting pressure on these artists. It's like, why is it we're always looking at the artists who either have to admit that they have problems, or the families having to mourn the death of these people? I mean, it happens far too fucking often. And actually, if that keeps happening, well, then why are we not looking at the system that they're entering? That has to change now, you know. And a lot of the work I do was nothing more kind of magical than what happened in the sports industry in around 1984, when, I don't know if any of you remember rugby being amateur, and actually the Olympics being amateur sports. And then suddenly they brought in kind of, you know, teams of psychologists and all sorts of medical people to support those teams as part of the training. That's what we have to do now, because it kind of is a bit of an amateur business. It's had years of practice, and it keeps on fucking up. So it has to change. It has to.
But what sort of things could you, for instance, put in place to move the industry on from that?
Well, I mean, I've been working for years sort of by word of mouth and not advertising, being this sort of weird woman that turns up with her bag in various bits of the world and sorting things out. But I am starting to expand that, so that I'm hoping to be able to do more education programs around, you know, how to keep yourself healthy, how to actually have fun, you know, without being completely off your face. And actually, I do a lot of work right from the very start, which is the songwriting part. I know this can be different to the dance world, because I work in all different genres. But that awareness of when you are at your most creative, you know, people go, oh yeah, I have to be really stoned to get in the right frame. That's utter bullshit. Your body just needs to be relaxed. There are other ways of relaxing your body to open up your mind. You know, writing, I'm talking on the mental health panel later, but writing material now where you have to be sort of on tour and getting new material together. I'm hearing people having to write on planes, on their laptops. Now, that's not a place to be, mentally, to be writing new material. And I think it just requires a lot more organisation and scheduling of that time. We can actually use our time much more effectively and get time off. We're not using our time properly. And everyone's so fucking busy all the time, but they're busy being busy. It's just organisation, really.
I think as an artist, this is one of the things also during this journey of my 2 years of sobriety. It was understanding also the responsibility also that I have as a person that is constantly sharing art or sharing something that I'm able to do with my sensibility in order to create emotion to people, because that's what we do with music. You have a huge responsibility. I don't think when you're smacked and you're completely gone, and I've been there way during years, completely smashed. Every time I was going on stage, there was no way to get on stage if I was not like completely out of my mind. And you have a responsibility. People are coming to see you. People are desiring to have a travel in their head, an illusion of that you create through music. So it's a huge responsibility. And being responsible with that means that you have to invest part of your time with your career. It means that you have to be in good moods. You can't give happiness if you are not happy. It doesn't work this way. You can't make someone happy if you don't know how to be happy. So it's extremely important you have to work out. You have to work out to what you're going to get on stage. You're going to be in the best of your shape. You're going to want to be there on stage and to give that energy to people in order to create that magic moment, in order to make people happy. There was points, you know, that when I used to come really at the end before my accident, I was getting on stage, I was so smashed that I didn't care anymore. I used to get there, calculating every 15 minutes to find a way that I could make another thing, a shot or something that would calm my anxiety down. Because of course, as more you do, as more anxious you get, it's that you start to be an auto-medicated person. So you medicate yourself for every problem you have. But you're not responsible with what's going in front of you. You're not responsible with the whole crowd that makes you existing for the chance that you have in order to give music to people. People are paying the entrance. People are coming sometimes they're traveling all the way around in order to be there to enjoy a show. So you have a responsibility. And this is what I wanted to come to what you said, is that I think sometimes by just communicate or by understanding the responsibility that not only the artist but the team that has around, in order to put the artist with the best training or the best things around himself to be in the best shape in order to give what he has to give, and to learn also how to say stop. This is, you know, there's one point that you have to say it's becoming too much, and you have to have the right people around, surrounded by the right people to help you to tell, you know, you can't be Superman. So there's one point where you have to slow down. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, anxiety and stress is the start. It's kind of the start of the fire. And if you can, anxiety is a great thing actually, because an adrenaline is an amazing drug in itself. But if it's not controlled, that, you know, then you self-medicate. And I do also want to make a little point about a lot of the EDM clients that I've had tend to be on the autism and Asperger's spectrums, and they seem to be rather more introverted, so performance is actually even more stressful for them. And when they start to kind of get stressed, and people misunderstand their level of stress to a general population kind of stress, handing them, you know, a Jack Daniels or whatever is about the last thing you should be doing. So again, for me, it's about education, you know, and I'm actually doing some research with Cambridge University on autism and Asperger's around music and what environments they need and what other people need to do to support them. So, I mean, it's a huge spectrum, actually, but this dealing with anxiety and stress right at the very start and training someone to get on stage.
Exhaustment, time change, food change, everything. It's just this whole thing when you're touring. Nobody tells you that, you know, it's like, especially musicians. It's not like football players that when they are like 16 or 17, they are with nutritionists, with psychologists, with personal trainers. They teach them how to be in shape in order to take pressure, take money, take blah blah. All the things create disease, basically. And we come from a world where everything is like, suddenly you're like drop there down, and it's, so you start to travel, you start to don't sleep. You know, sometimes I was not sleeping for 7 days. It's just not human. This is not part of who we are. And this start to triggers disease, sickness, and anxiety, and everything increase. And you start to take things in order, because you think this will help you to actually level it up, but you don't realize you're getting every time more there down. And it really, in almost 20 years of using, I think I never had anybody who told me anything about it. And the first time that I got information about how does it work with addiction, with the brain, with the physiology and things like this, was at the rehab. I think what saved me is the fact that I was studying 5 hours every day about brain, about how does the chemical works in my head, how do I calm down, what is a craving, what is a trigger, what is all the things that you had no idea, and it's constantly out there.
Yeah, and you know, the more you're talking about how good is that? But even young people, you know, it's one, you're in the work environment, which I think that's a very good point, and people are coming to see you. You know, it might be their holiday and they've saved up for a very long time, but there is no real education around the damage, because the alcohol companies are so powerful and worth so much money. We don't really see or get the information even in our schools what it's doing to the brain. It's horrific, you know, and drugs. They're all terrible.
You guys are talking a lot about anxiety and stress, and how it is very stressful to go up on stage. And again, there's other choices. Everyone here is equipped with the #1 anti-stress device in the entire world. It doesn't cost anything. It's available to you all the time. It's taking a deep breath into your belly. Like, we could literally just all do it right now and just breathe into your belly.
Should we do it?
Yeah.
What other tools are there that that people could know about in order to sort of replace substances with other things?
That's the #1. It all starts with stress and anxiety. And if you just stop and notice, I'm a little worried about this gig. Okay, I'm going to breathe into my belly.
Internal dialogue is a huge problem for everybody. And, you know, in every respect, you know, you have it stressing about paying bills and getting on stage and all sorts of things. With addicts as well, you know, when you speak to people who've been through that and they say, you have these voices going, go on, it's all right, you can just have one, just one last one, la 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 la. It's having that awareness of who is speaking to you, listening to that voice. And what you can do is you alter the how it speaks to you. Because it's probably going, go on, go on, go on. It's like that person that's really fucking annoying that'll go on, have a glass of champagne. And it's like, I don't want one, thanks. And you do it to yourself. And I think once you have that awareness of, how am I speaking to me? Because it's your inner coach. And kind of altering, you know, having the awareness and going, that's you again. In fact, I get people going, pull it out and have a conversation with it, you know. It's like, I don't want to drink. You need to quieten down that voice. And having that real awareness of that inner coach, it can be, if you speak to yourself nicely, you achieve more things. If you speak to yourself terribly, you cause yourself a huge amount of problems.
In the late 80s and the 1990s, when the dance scene kind of kicked off, especially the 90s, it was a very hedonistic sort of time and era, and it was almost like, I don't know, not just DJs, but clubbers you'd be a legend if you got really out of your face, or you know, that was the rock and roll lifestyle was suddenly available to everybody. Has there been a kind of sea change in the last few years in electronic music with regards to that sort of thing?
I would say that, you know, we kind of grew up in this environment where rock and roll was almost trendy. I mean, it was like we grew up in a generation where cigarette was actually incredible. You could smoke in planes, and drinking was like, wow, everybody should drink. And of course, when you have this message, it's like, of course, you're gonna grow up like saying like, fuck, I'm gonna smoke. I'm gonna take everything that society offers, and it gives you a high, and it creates an experience, and it leads you somewhere. I don't think that anybody goes there with the intention of ending up being a crackhead, basically. You know, that's the result of a long use, yeah. And I would say that there is, as you were saying before, there's a twist right now, which is like maybe this glitterish thing of rock and roll and blah blah blah. It's maybe there's a little bit more view under the surface, actually really deep there down, where you start to see the real face of it and the result of it, also the consequences of it. And I wish nobody would see ever what is there down. There's nothing. It's no. It's a dark world, and it's like there's no fun. It's not fun, really.
You must have had some fun when you were partying, though.
Yeah, well, a little bit too much.
I think people forget that, you know, we all know about the big pharmaceutical business, particularly in America. It's huge. Yeah. But on the other side, you know, I always think you've got the pharmaceutical businesses for those that go to the doctor and want to kind of take pills. And then you got people that like taking drugs. And, you know, and this is no judgment, but they're illegal drugs. People forget, just because they're illegal drugs and they're meant to be a bit of a laugh, some arsehole is making a fortune, and loads of kids are getting into a lot of bother as the food chain of the drugs world. It's so unbelievably dark. I have people going on about worrying about their carbon footprint, and they talk about plastic in the fucking sea, and then they'll go and do a line of coke. It's like, the hypocrisy is ridiculous. So, I mean, if you have an awareness, if you are worried about carbon footprints and all of those things, you know, maybe have a moment to think, oh, hang on a minute, this has probably been up 5 arseholes, and a couple of people might have been shot along the way to get this to my nostril. It's pretty rancid, actually.
I want to just open this out to the floor for a minute. Has anyone got any questions or points they'd like to raise as part of the panel?
Hi, I'm Athena, from co-founder of Back to Back Clothing from London. Kind of a question for the artist. Do you think the way you make music and the music that you create is different now you're not substance misusing?
Well, can I go? I think when you're high making music, you have a distortion of reality. So basically, you're stuck in a loop where you believe yourself that you're making the piece of the century, and you're completely convinced, because you're so fucking high as a balloon, that you really truly believe that is like the piece of this century. But when you go down, you start to listen to it, and you start to realize, oh fuck, I was stuck somewhere that actually it didn't make absolute sense. I think it creates an illusion. The fact that when you take substances or whatever, it creates more security, it creates a little distortion, it distorts reality. And you know, I remember, this is the perfect way to answer. I remember one time I was in a rave in Germany, and we came out in the morning. I was high as a fucking balloon too, all right? So we came out, and I was right in a corner of a parking lot where the festival got finished, actually. And I was standing on the car next to a washing machine that was washing actually the party. And the washing machine was making a noise of... And on the next side, there was a kind of couple of guys that they were standing next to there. They were dancing, thinking it was still the music on. And then I was like realizing, I'm like, wait, maybe the music I'm doing is not that incredible anymore, you know? It's maybe I'm so high that actually any noise can create a perception that is like, wow, the track is so fucking good. And it's not. So it creates a distortion. I think when you're sober, you have a much more objective and clear environment of depth of music and richness that actually has music. That's what I think.
Cool. Another question?
Hi, my name is Gedra, and I'm doing entertainment management in Falmouth University, UK. And I'm wondering, what kind of role does an artist manager play in this context, in, well, an artist drug use?
Good question. So have any of your artists, have your managers been kind of supportive with your decision to go sober? Have they maybe not gone sober and so they're almost trying to tempt you back into things, or how's it worked with people you work with very closely?
Yeah, no, I've been very lucky. The management company that worked with our band, one of the management companies is going to be on the panel later on about mental health. And without naming names, they've had experience of helping other artists. And I think when you're in a really bad place and it's very obvious, people generally are helpful. Yeah. It's been good for me, personally.
How about you other guys? The people around you, how important have they been?
I think that there's, I mean, you can't, I mean, what I've learned from my experience is that when during my 20-something years of drug use, it's very easy to blame someone else, yeah? That's the easiest thing to do. But at the end, you cannot change unless you didn't decide that you want to change something. So you can be surrounded with 50 people telling you that you're being a shithole, you're doing far too much drugs, and blah, 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 blah. I've heard it in the past, but I was not interested to listen to it. And I would fire people because they would be, oh, come on, they're so moralistic, and You find excuses for everything. Unless you don't decide that there is a change that comes in you, I think it's very hard. I think it's a very difficult, I mean, it's a disease. It's a very difficult thing to deal with. And you can't blame your family. You can't blame your friends. You can't blame your management or, no, you created that monster and you have to, at one point, touch the button and deal with it. It's not easy.
Just want to say the one problem about the disease of substances is that it tells you you haven't got a disease. It's the major problem with it, you know.
I'm actually working with a number of managers, and actually we're currently building this out and doing a lot of research around it. But when an artist is really struggling, it's very hard. And this actually applies a lot to the tour managers because they're on the road, they're seeing the real raw part of the whole system. And everyone lives in fear of holding their hand up and saying there's a problem because they think they'll be fired. And I'm actually, my company at the moment, as I say, we're working with some amazing managers, lawyers, accountants, next of kin even, and lots of people advising how we are all going to be able to say, we've got a problem, let's try and work on how we deal with this. And have that moment of respite without the artist who will be in full addiction mode going, fuck you all, I'm off, you're fired. Because all they're going to do is go to some arsehole manager who's probably also got an addiction who will just see them as a cash cow flogged to death. So hopefully change is coming soon.
I think we've run out of time. Is that we need to wind up now? Okay, well, I'd like to thank the panellists very much for being so open and honest today.